Welcome to our second day of the Open Doors Week at the University of Tartu. And today we are having a webinar for the Master's Program in Society and State. And my name is Anna, and today I'm going to moderate the session. And today with me, I have Eva, who is going to introduce contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern studies. And I have Robert, who is going to talk about politics and governments in the digital age. So our schedule will be as follows. So at first, we are going to have a presentation round. So first, Robert is going to talk and then Eva. And the talk will be approximately for half an hour. And then we are going to open QA session. Please, I encourage you to leave your questions under QA section. So it's going to be easier for us to answer them. Don't leave them in chat, please. And if you please leave your questions, don't forget to leave your questions, and we are going to answer them in the end of the session. So all in all, I think it's all the instructions so far that we have. So I think we can proceed with the first talk by Robert, who is going to talk about the politics and governance in the digital age. And Robert, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello, Anna. Thanks for giving me the floor. So my name is Robert Krimmer. I'm Professor of E-Governance here at the University of Tartu within the Johann Schutte Institute of Political Studies. So I have recently joined the university and have taken over the program management of this master that is generally been known as Democracy and Governance Studies, and we have rebranded that into Politics and Governance in the Digital Age. So maybe first a bit about my background and why I'm doing this, because that might also give you an illustration of my personal emphasis in the program and how I'm doing this together. So maybe I should also emphasize that I'm coordinating this program together with Lisa Talving, and I will give you an insight on how we also share our roles in this program. So I'm myself, I'm an Austrian and German citizen. I came to Estonia the first time in 2005 when they first ran their internet voting. So basically it was the first country that actually introduced an alternative voting channel via the internet. And that fascinated me so much that I wanted to study it even further to understand how does it happen, why does it happen? And that journey led me to working for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which then in turn brought me to do a couple of election observation missions to Estonia, where I also tried to provide feedback to the policymaking process in Estonia around elections, around internet voting. And in turn, that brought me actually back to academia and eventually to this professorship here in Tartu. So what I have always been interested in is this mix of how does technology actually shape social processes? How does it change social processes and essentially transform it? And also with that also comes the understanding that technology, in my understanding, cannot be neutral. It always has an impact that usually is more kind of like a catalyst that actually allows for things to happen that wouldn't happen without technology, right? And obviously we are applying that technology on two dimensions within that program. On the one hand side, on the political process within actually a democratic state. So how actually do the political processes change? How does actually the undertaking of the state, of decision-making in the state, both within bodies of the state as well as also outside of the actual governance stream, so actually including citizens, actually evolve? How do they work? How do they get shaped? So what democratic institutions do we actually have and understand, and what impact does technology have on them? And then we actually talk about the second pillar within that program, and that is actually how are those democratic institutions being run? So how do we ensure that actually our day-to-day activities in the state are actually taken care of? So how do we actually understand the institution of the state, and how does running a state actually work? How does providing public services work? And essentially get an understanding, how does this digital transformation of the public services take place? How can you actually transform them actively? How can you shape them actively? How can you actually modify them? And having an understanding both from a society perspective, from an institutional perspective, or organizational perspective, but obviously also having an understanding of the technology itself, right? It wouldn't work otherwise. So from that description, you already get that there is actually a very clear interdisciplinary focus of the program. Yeah, so we are starting out from a social society perspective and then delve into the institution with the understanding of how do the different factors like politics, like democracy, like law, like technology actually impact the program. This program is fully taught in English, actually. That might also be an important thing. I mean, that might also be a good insight that I'm actually managing this, as my Estonian is getting better, but it's still limited. Yeah? So knowledge of Estonian is beneficial, but it's not necessary for mastering this program. Second, how is the program structured? So as you can already see from the outline of the courses, at the beginning of the program, we put a strong emphasis on actually methodological understanding. So both an understanding of the quantitative paradigm and the qualitative paradigm of getting a first outline of your possible master thesis project. Yeah, so you start off with that in the very first semester. Then you actually develop your core competencies both in politics and in governance. So that's what you will also do in the first 2 semesters. So we'll go into political theory, into comparative politics. It will also go into political behavior and elections, how do party politics work. And then on the governance side, you will get an understanding what actually governance is. You will get an understanding of how do the delivery of services work, and actually how can you actually also run democratic institutions. So how can an e-democracy actually involve? And those will be taught in the very first semester. So as I mentioned before, I'm doing this program management together with Lisa Talving. So Lisa will be focusing on the politics focus of this master, and I will be focusing on the governance side of the master. Obviously, we do everything together, but that you also will see your professors and teachers directly as part of the program, and we'll be actually also teaching very actively ourselves in the program in there. So we won't just be the figureheads, but we are actually going to be hands-on in the program, and you will have quite a lot of courses with us. Then in the second year of your studies, you can actually specialize. You can specialize either towards more in politics, where you could go into political culture, you could go into extreme right-wing movements, or into a better understanding of EU institutions. Or when you focus more on the governance side, you actually will get an understanding of the recent phenomenon of cross-border e-governance. So how can we actually make our public services work between Germany and Estonia, between Austria and Germany, between Germany and Lithuania, and so on and so on. So you get an understanding how does this dimension beyond this Estonian e-state actually work. So we're actually not only focusing on Estonia, but obviously we get a good understanding of Estonia, but we're actually trying to get generalizable insight into the program. We'll also have a nice class on the recent issues in governance, where we're actually going to involve guest lecturers like visiting professors such as former President Ilves, or other guest researchers that come to our university, that we actually going to delve into practical problems and work them out together with an institution that help us solve those issues. And then we'll also go into policy writing and advocacy, where you actually learn how to do background briefings for ministers, for other political figures, as well as also administrative heads, on how can you actually make policy, how do you actually write policy and advocacy around that. And then you have the chance to go into electives. On the one hand side, we suggest you very strongly to do an internship, or you can also go a bit more into big data, you can go into a bit more methodological skills. And around that as well, it's also possible to do an exchange semester. We also support that in the second year very actively. And then towards the end of your program, you're focusing very strongly on the last module, and that is actually writing your master thesis. And we will support you with a master seminar throughout that process of the second year, where the fall semester is going to focus on writing your proposal, on actually presenting it, to actually discuss it jointly with your colleagues, and actually identify how can you actually improve it. And then in the second semester, or basically in the spring semester, we're going to prepare you for the defense of your master thesis. So we're going to do a mock run. We're going to actually provide you active feedback on your presentation. So we really put a strong focus to support you, so that you are actually able to finish your master's program in time. So that's something we're very committed to, and that holds true for both Lisa and myself. And then the last element in the program is really the optional courses, which are completely free, but there we actually recommend you to do things like how to build a startup company, or going into further details about programming, or you can actually also do a bit more of the elements that you would like from the other specialization, but that you didn't choose. And I think that was, in a very brief and compressed way, an overview of the program, the politics and governance in the digital age, which should actually prepare for this advisors level, on the top level of a ministry, of a party, of actually the government, where you would advise ministers, you would work in the office of the minister, or you would actually work on the highest levels of an administration, where you would develop the future planning of the ministry, or you would actually also delve into a deeper function of this assistance, of this advisory function. And similarly, you could also work in the private sector, that you work for consultants like that are consulting the public sector. You can help them having an understanding of the political processes. So my past students actually also started to work for international organizations like UNDP, or they worked for the European Commission. So I currently have one student that is advising Vice President Vestager in the European Commission. I have another one working on the European e-government programs in Luxembourg. I have one student that is currently working in Washington, D.C. For an embassy there as their technology attaché. So actually, there is a quite wide array of possibilities what students can actually study after doing this program, and actually doing a master thesis with us, respectively, actually studying with us. So it's actually a quite fascinating program. I'm very happy to be able to work and build up on the previous work of my colleagues, and actually taking that to the next level on having a full understanding of the digital transformation in the public space, both on a political as well as on an administrative level. And with that, I finish for now, and I hand back over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Robert, for describing the program, and also for touching the question about the future career after graduation of the program, with showcases where our students actually working. And now I'm going to give a floor to Eva, who is going to talk about contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern studies, and Eva is going to show you also the slides.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm going to share my screen, just a few seconds. So, can you see it? Yes, perfect. Yes. So, thank you, Anna, for the introduction. A warm welcome also from my side. My name is Eva, and I'm the program director of the Asian and Middle Eastern studies. So we are now traveling from politics and governance to Asia and the Middle East, I would say. And I'm also quite new in the position of being the program director. So I started last year, and I'm quite happy to have the chance to develop this fascinating program. My own background is very much related to Asia. I have myself studied Chinese studies and Japanese studies. And so I myself share the fascination of Asian languages and cultures, as well as societies. So I'm going to show you the some organizational aspects of the Contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern Studies program. And as the name is really, really long, we are usually at the university saying COMES. So the capital letters of the Contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. So we usually name it as COMES. And this is what I'm going to do the whole way throughout the presentation. And if you join us in autumn, you are going to hear COMES all the time, because it's much easier. So it's a two-year MA program. It's also taught in English language. You don't have to have Estonian language knowledge, but if you want to, you can also study Estonian here in Estonia. We have 120 credit points, and you have to pay a tuition fee for the program. For each year, we have 16 study places, and we are warmly welcoming interested students in Asian and Middle Eastern studies. So I put a map here, and you see about the area we are focusing on. So, and as the name also tells you, contemporary, we are looking at the modern Asia and the Middle Eastern societies and studying contemporary developments in these countries, but not only in the countries. So we are not really just focusing on, for example, China or India, but rather on the dynamics in the region and between the countries. So very important in the program and studying in the program is, well, not just focusing on one country. For example, if you are interested in Japan, so you won't just take courses and gain knowledge on Japan, but rather also compare certain aspects of, for example, political development or economic development in East Asia with Southeast Asia, for example. So it's more comparative and focuses on these dynamics between these regions. So as I said, we focus on societies, on political development of the countries, on markets, on economy, but also culture is an important aspect there in order to understand how societies and political developments, for example, work. So, right. So I'm going to show you now the program structure. So we have different modules in the program, starting with the base module, which you have to take all the courses in. And then we have elective courses, which I'm going to talk in a few seconds more about. Then you have the language module, where you can study a language, which is offered by the Language Center at the University of Tartu. Depending on your prior language knowledges and your interests, you can choose something you like. Then we have the optional course module, which you can take any course which is offered at the university and you are attracted to, and the program finishes with a master's thesis. So if we talk about the basic module of the CAMES curriculum, so we have different courses. It's a list here on courses which are mandatory in the if you study Asian and the Middle Eastern studies. So, for example, Asian and Middle Eastern civilizations and modern day mindsets, for example, are courses which you get a kind of idea on how the regional dynamics and how the history has shaped the region today. So it still has, even though its name is civilizations, it's still very much modern oriented, in order to explain you why, for example, certain aspects are as they are today. In mindsets, we are going more to talk about mentality. Then you have courses which are more focusing on economics, for example, emerging markets. We have a course on international law, which gives a good background on developments of international law. And we have also a course on demography and migration, for example. So the base module is rather a very broad introduction to different aspects of the region, also different disciplines, and how to tackle theoretically certain well, questions of your interest, for example. Then we go on with elective courses, and this is just a selection here I put here on this slide. We have courses with a focus on Asia, we have courses with focus on the Middle East, and as you can see, it is very broad, and it is also, we don't necessarily focus very much on one specific country, but rather, for example, as you see in the title, security challenges in Asia Pacific, where you get, as I mentioned also before, like the overview of the region. So you don't necessarily learn only about one country in isolation. And so as you can see here, we have several courses which deal with the region of Asia. And on the other hand, we also have courses on the Middle East. And the elective courses, you don't have to take all of them, just depending on your own interest, your personal interest, but also on your background, what makes sense for you. And also if you think about the future, what would you like to do later? So you can just pick something you think is most appropriate for your interests. Also, as Robert mentioned before, internship is part of the curriculum. However, in the CAMES curriculum, it is mandatory. So you have to take the, you have to do an internship. So you have to apply the theoretical knowledge you learned from the program in practical settings then. So just as an example, you study, for example, a language, you study the cultural background, business aspects, the mindset, and then maybe you have the opportunity to do the internship in a company which is dealing with Asian clients, for example. So you have the actual opportunity to like kind of in practice show your knowledge you gained in the program. So for example, some examples of internships current students are doing. For example, there's one student doing market research for Estonian companies for China. So he's working on doing market research, or also in terms of e-commerce, doing some research on these e-commerce platforms for Asia, Singapore, I think it was. So, and it is very much really according to your interest. It doesn't have to be in the field of economics, not at all. So we have also 2 students who have done internships in museums, in different museums. Also, for example, one Chinese student did a wonderful internship in a museum with paper and doing paper culture and introducing Chinese paper, art of paper and paper design in Estonia, which was really lovely. You can also do several research projects, so it's not at all limited to economics or something outside the academy. It can be also inside the university that you join, for example, a research team and do a research project. Or just recently, a few students started a very interesting library project, for example, digitalizing materials from the Oriental Studies Library in Tartu, which is really, I think, a very exciting project. So there are different opportunities, and it really depends on your own interests and needs also. And at the end, you have the master thesis, which has to be related to the program, of course. So a topic on Asia or the Middle East, also depending on, for example, on your background, what kind of knowledge do you have? What kind of elective courses did you choose? What kind of yeah, and also what is your what are your plans for the future? So as for the career, again, it really depends on your background and interests. So you can work in the field of economy, for example, being involved in trade, for example, in business with Middle Eastern or Asian countries. You can also go into the direction of diplomacy or politics. I think if you feel like staying at the university, this is also one of the options you have. Or you can do something in the field of culture, arts, museum. It really depends. So it's very broad and depends on your own interests. At the moment, as this is a very new program, we have the first cohort of the students is currently busy writing the master thesis, so they are planning graduating in spring. So I cannot say what the students now are doing. Like, we don't have any alumni yet, so I don't have statistics here, but I think depending on your own interests and wishes, I think the program provides you quite a solid basis on dealing with Asian or Middle Eastern countries. So for the application, you have to write a motivation letter, which I'm going to read with some other persons involved in the admission. And I think for the motivation letter, I heard that sometimes people are not really sure what to write in the motivation letter, but I think what you should definitely make clear is why you want to enter the program. Why are you interested in these topics of discussing Asia or the Middle East? And I think it's also very important to stress how your previous education or previous background is linked to the program. And also, one of the aspects I would love to read in the motivation letter is your ideas about the potential master thesis topic. So, for example, last year, I had the feeling that many applicants have kind of forgotten this kind of aspect, and this was challenging to give points to these applications then. So just bear in mind to write about what exactly are you academically interested in, what could be your potential master thesis topic, and how would you, for example, tackle these kind of issues. And this is not, if you write it in a motivation letter, it doesn't really mean that you have to do your master thesis then later on that topic. No, you have the freedom to choose, and ideas also change throughout the time, and this is totally fine. But just show that you know how to go about an academic question, for example. So, right. So the application deadline is the 15th of March. However, applicants from the European Union have also the chance to apply later for the program as well. But right, this is all from my side, and thank you very much. And,
thank you very much, Eva, for your wonderful presentation about the program and for presenting all the details and the admission process as well. So I think we can start answering the questions, but I will encourage you to still leave your questions. Maybe you have some coming after this presentation, so please write your questions, because you have the unique opportunity to have the answers from program managers directly. So let's start with our first questions then. And the first question: what is the language of master's programs in society and state, English or Estonian? So Robert, what is the language of the of your program?
Well, our program is fully in English, right? So, I mean, obviously, if you would know some Estonian, it will help you to get a better understanding of the sources that are available exclusively in Estonian. But I would say that plays really a minor role, and Google Translate helps a good deal to navigate with those issues. But the actual teaching, the actual language of instruction is English.
Eva?
Yeah, it's actually the same as Robert said. So also for the Commerce program, it's in English. However, well, living in Estonia, I think knowing some basic Estonian is definitely a good start of getting kind of into the society, but it's not, you can totally survive with English. It's no problem at all. And the program is fully in English. We have many international students. We have students from China, and so if you have knowledge in Chinese, you can also practice your Chinese with these Chinese students as well. So actually, I would love to say the program is multilingual, and it kind of is, because the official language is English, but as we have international, and Tartu in general has very many international students. So I think it's multilingual in this way that unofficially you can speak every language.
Thank you very much. So the next question, I think it's addressed to Robert. I wanted to ask about the study mode, whether it will be both online and offline. Thank you.
So, I mean, I would say we have very progressive teachers also in our study program in general. So I think they make active use of modern media, whether that's online, whether that's videos, whether that's in synchronous as well as in asynchronous ways of teaching. But of course, we all do prepare in-present studies. So you actually need to be in Tartu if the pandemic allows, right? So, I mean, as long as the pandemic hasn't cleared ourselves, I think in general, that will be something that we will accommodate. But of course, it's a policy overall of the University of Tartu to actually favor present studies over remote studies. And actually our experience also shows you learn much more effectively if you have the chance of being in presence. But we do support, and we are flexible enough to switch from one day to the other to online teaching and support you in the best way possible. So we make use of communication platforms such as Moodle, such as Microsoft Teams, like Zoom. So we're using any tool that is available to us. I mean, otherwise we would not be credible in talking about the digital age, actually.
Eva, what about your program? Do you have any news? Is it going to be online or offline?
So it's not fully online in this way that, of course, I totally agree with Robert. So yes, it's online because of the pandemic, but if the pandemic allows, we switch to hybrid or fully in class versions. But at the moment, we are online. Also in the autumn semester, I think half of the semester was online, the other half was in the hybrid version. So we had some students also attending from Asia regularly, and well, it depends on how the pandemic goes, but we are using Moodle, Zoom, Teams, BBB. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. The next question is addressed to Robert. What is the period of internship during the main in politics and governance in digital age, and in which year?
So, I mean, we recommend doing the internship actually in the first year, as the second one should be focused on doing your work on the master thesis and eventually an exchange program, yeah, so that you go abroad. So it is better to do it in the first year, but you're flexible on this, right? So obviously between the first and the second year is probably the ideal time to do an internship, and it's connected with actually getting the credits for that. So I would say the earlier the better. So I wouldn't do it right away at the very first month. So leave a little bit of time towards the end of the first year before the second year starts. I think that's the ideal time, but it of course always depends on your opportunities for this. The important element there is for the internship is not that anything goes as long as you work. It's rather the opposite. It needs to actually complement your experience in the studies. So you need to actually be able to use what you have learned and show that you actually can learn something in addition to that, by actually comparing and contrasting your theoretical knowledge that you gain through the studies in the practical terms, and actually allow you to reflect onto that. Ideal would be, of course, something where you have a topic for an internship. Let's say you're going to study e-referenda. So how are e-referendas being organized? So it would be fantastic if you would do an internship before in the Ministry of Interior or on a city level, where you actually get an insight in how are those referenda organized if they're not done digitally, or if you're lucky enough that that organization is actually doing one online, that you actually are able to study it. So you could combine it with doing a case study about your internship for later in your master thesis. So those would be the ideal ways of combining the internship and adding value to your program as well as to your future career, including the master thesis.
Yes, thank you very much, Robert, for so nice answer. We will proceed with the next question. And this question, good afternoon. I'm going to apply to politics and governance in the digital age. I would like to clarify that how background, probably what background I should have to gain scholarship, especially scholarship of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. Thanks in advance. My GPA is 98.71 and I have been a volunteer in government structures. Robert, would you be able to comment on that?
So, I mean, I would say in general about the scholarships, the study fee waivers that we're giving, it's really based on your fit with the program. Yeah, so basically, if you actually have already some prior knowledge in international relations, in political studies on a bachelor level, or you actually have also an IT background, but you actually have an interest, you actually can also show a background in social studies, maybe you did that as a minor, or you have a possibility in other ways of doing an extra course, then those are elements that actually will qualify you, give you very good chances for actually coming out on the top of our candidates, and likewise of being forward with the study fee waivers. Regarding the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I think that's something where I would like to ask you to send me an email about, and I will get back to you on a concrete answer with this. But we are not only focusing on GPA levels, but it's really for us the fit with the program. That's the criteria for giving study fee waivers.
Thank you very much, Robert. I will also send you the link to the scholarships, all the scholarships that we offer at our university, so you can check it out. I have to warn the applicant because we don't know yet if the scholarships of Ministry of Foreign Affairs are going to be given in 2021. So it's still under consideration, but maybe you can apply also for DORA scholarship, and you basically don't need to apply for it separately. You can just tick the box when you are sending your application to the university and you will be automatically considered for this scholarship. But anyways, I'm going to send you the link so you can check it out more closely. The next question is about English language requirements. My name is Atif Raza from Pakistan, qualification MA in International Relations 2019. Want to enhance my study in different environment. My question is, am I eligible for take admission without IELTS or not? So I also provide you the link to accept categories for students who don't need to provide their English language proficiency. But I can tell you that since you're not from the European Union country or not from the English-speaking country, you will need to provide the IELTS confirmation of your language proficiency, because the accept category is valid only for people from these regions who studied in English as a full-time student. So just just give me 1 second. I'm going to copy the link so you can also check out all the accept categories, and I'm going to send it to you. Okay, the next question is about the class size. I wanted to ask, what will be size of the classes usually? So Eva, maybe you can answer. How is it your program?
It depends on the lecture or on the class, but if we have classes which are only for the commerce students, it's only the commerce students. So most likely maximum 16. So it's quite like a family like sitting together and discussing issues. So, but if you attend the bigger lectures, for example in economics, then you might end up in a lecture with 30 or 50 attendants. So it really depends. But if you have these smaller classes which are designed for the program specifically, you have like not very many students.
Thank you, Eva. Robert, what about your program? What is the size of the classes?
I mean, as with the the past experience when Eva was talking after me, I can just second what she has said before. So when we are actually talking about specific classes for the master program, then it's actually a relatively focused group. So there it depends on how many we will take in. We don't have a limitation on the spaces like Eva mentioned before, but usually it's around 20 because we really go for the quality of the students. So it's not everyone that gets in. So if you get accepted, then that already means your first step on the excellent education. And so usually it's around 20 for the specialized courses, which would be, for example, like the one on in the specialization, right? So like cross-border governance, recent issues in governance, or like the policy writing and advocacy. So those would be specialized courses. There it will be smaller. In the others, it can be up to 60, 65. That's usually the upper limit.
Thank you very much, Robert. The next question is addressed to Eva. So is contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern studies for me if I don't have any previous experience in Asian studies? Just personal interest, currently studying Korean language.
Yes, definitely you can join, because you don't really have to have a BA in Asian studies. You can also have a BA in, I don't know, economics, political science, maybe also sociology, something different. And if you have interest in studying Asia, I think it's the right place to come. And you can also take language courses at the University Language Center. And we have also in the base module, you get these kind of basic courses, which are also introducing you Asia and the Middle East. So even if you don't have specific knowledge about the regions, it doesn't really matter. It's maybe a bit more reading than for those who don't have that much prior knowledge, but I think it doesn't really matter. If you are interested, you are welcome to join, even without background in Asian studies. You just have to have the motivation.
Thank you very much, Eva. The next question is addressed to Robert. Thank you for the information. If there is an opportunity to work in private sector after politics and government program. Robert, sorry, we cannot hear you. You're muted.
I did the mistake of the zombie. Yeah? I forgot to unmute myself. Yeah. So no, I mean, as I mentioned already before, you know, you don't need to work in the public sector, but most likely you will work on the public sector. So meaning whether you are actually on the demand side, meaning the public sector that is actually procuring services from the private sector, or you're actually on the supplying side from the private sector. Let's think about an advertisement agency that does a lot of policy campaigns or policy supporting campaigns for ministries, for European institutions. Then, you know, you're obviously working on the private side, but your understanding that you gained in our master's program will be very beneficial for your future job, right? So obviously, when you take our master, then you have an interest in the common good, in creating public value, and whether that is going to be on a supplier or a demand side, that's up to you where you want to work. You want to work for profit or non-profit, right? I mean, either way, I think there's so many ways of how you can use the knowledge in the program later on.
Thank you very much, Robert. The next question is very general. Does the university expect students to finish their studies in the fourth semester, or is it no problem to do some additional courses, language courses, for instance, and write the MA thesis in the fifth semester? Maybe Eva, you can comment on that. So basically, the student want to extend the studies for the fifth semester and do MA and some language courses.
Well, you don't have, I think you don't have to finish on time. So if you want to enjoy the student life longer, I guess it's possible.
But there are certain limits, right? So
I think there are certain deadlines and limits you have to bear in mind in this case.
They keep changing, yeah. So,
but I don't really, I cannot say any I don't. I have the feeling that it's fine. I think, and also if you, for example, you have the chance to study abroad as well. So you might choose the mobility option, and I think there are options that you just postpone your master thesis then for one semester or maybe 2 semesters. It really depends, but these are very organizational and bureaucratic issues which are very difficult to explain here right now, taking some kind of assumptions. So if it's more concrete, I think we find an answer to that.
I just have one thing I want to explain that I also learned. So in Estonia, there exists a concept of academic leave, right? So you can take either for personal reasons or for medical reasons or for other elements that might be impacting you, like you want to do a longer internship, right? So for half a semester, and you're not going to actively study, then there is the possibility to take a break from the studies. You will still be able actually to do exams in some cases, so that there are also some exceptions, but there is the possibility to actually also extend the duration of your studies for particular reasons. But as Eva said, I think that always depends on the very concrete individual case, but also probably what needs to be said compared to other university systems. Estonia does not encourage the Humboldt ideal that you study forever, right? Estonia likes to do programs. You finish the program, then you move to the next program. If you have the means for that, you're very welcome to do so. But it's about finishing something that you have started and then you go to the next. It's possible to a certain degree to enrich your learning experience with additional courses that ideally fit your program. Yeah, you're able to interrupt it, but what Estonia really, really emphasizes is finishing in time. That in time might be a technical term, that you actually only have those semesters that you actually have taken courses and so on, but that's a very important figure for Estonian university systems. So that might be different than in your home countries, including my own home background. So I mean, in my home country in Austria, I mean, it's common that ministers actually have 2-digit semester numbers and they never graduate. So that's certainly something that's not very common in Estonia.
Thank you, Robert, for commenting. Frank, I also encourage you to join our other webinar about admission process to the University of Tartu, and maybe you can also more in details ask this question from admission specialists, because it's more like bureaucratic related questions. So I am going to send right now the in our chat the link to our next webinars, and you can see that on Friday we have a webinar how to apply to the University of Tartu. So this is the place where you can ask this question and get more bureaucratic related answer. The next question is addressed to Robert. What background is needed for the politics and democracy program? Do I need something special?
No, I mean, as you can also see from the website, right? I mean, what's required is that you have a bachelor's degree, right? I mean, if you have taken a bachelor's degree in a music instrument, right? That doesn't disqualify you from taking our master program because you want to change. You know, you might have a bit of a harder time than other students because you need to actually, you know, learn quite a bit of additional background and so on. But possible it is clearly. If you show us through your motivation letter that you're really, really dedicated and a highly promising candidate because, yeah, and that's then up to you how to convince us, then we don't have any problem in that. Actually, we really encourage a diverse background in our master program. I mean, it is an international program. Obviously, people come from different backgrounds, from different schools, from different countries. So we actually believe in this enrichment of the different cultures. Yeah. And similarly, there is not one profile that we're looking for. But having all said that, what we clearly, what is beneficial is certainly when you have a certain understanding of technology that can be either through formal or informal education. If you have a background and understanding of social concepts of how does society work, how does the state work, how do politics work, those are things that are essential and really beneficial for your application. It does not need to be on the formal side. It can be informal. You know, if you've read all the political idea theory and political theory in general in your spare time, I mean, that's going to be super for us because you probably have read and more knowledge than most bachelor students. But you don't have any proof of that, but you will show that through your motivation letter. So what I'm trying to say is be an interesting candidate, be someone that clearly tries and has an interest for the focus areas of the master program, be that politics, be that administration and technology. Yeah, and then you will be our perfect fit.
Thank you very much, Robert, for such nice tips to our applicants. So next question is going to be addressed to Eva. Is there any cooperation with the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and your program?
Yes. So yes, we have the possibility of 2 scholarships for 2 candidates, but for Estonian candidates. So the scholarship means that you don't have to pay the tuition fee. And if you, as an Estonian citizen, want to have the chance to apply for the scholarship of the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have to apply until the 15th of March. So because the ministry is going to conduct interviews probably in May for selecting the 2 candidates. So there are going to be 2 scholarships for Estonian students who are then who don't have to pay the tuition fee then.
Thank you very much, Eva. The next question is also addressed to you. I'm thinking in applying to the Contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern Studies Master Program, and I would like to know how it works in probably regards of applying to the internship. I have never had opportunity to do one, and I'm worried about that because if it is to do in Estonia, I don't speak Estonian at the moment.
I think if you've never had the opportunity to do one internship, it's a perfect chance to do one now in the program, right? So I think, I guess I don't really know your background, but I think you don't really have to worry that much and think too much about that. So if you start the program, you don't have to do the internship in the very first semester. You can do it in the second semester, third semester. Just take your time. And we are also going to have several discussions and info sessions on the internship. You are not completely alone with the internship. Of course, it's your responsibility to apply and do it. But you are not really alone. You got support also from my side and from the university. You don't necessarily have to do the internship in Estonia. You can do it also abroad. You can, if you have connections to, for example, I don't know, Asia, some companies in Asia, for example, some universities in Asia, you can do your internship also in Asia, or depending on your home country and your connections and interests, you could also consider doing your internship in your home country. Of course, it has to be related to the program, and as Robert mentioned also before, you have to it has to contribute to your knowledge and to your to the program. So and you don't necessarily have to speak Estonian for the internship. For example, if I'm thinking about students who have finished their internships right now, there are several foreign students who have done their internships in Estonia without Estonian knowledge. So you have the knowledge in the English language, or and you also use maybe, I don't know, Chinese or some other language. It really depends on the internship, but you don't have to speak Estonian in order to do an internship in Estonia. It really depends. So I think it's kind of natural that you are worried about it, but you don't really have to worry about this topic that much right now, because you're not completely alone with this, and it's going to be fine.
Thank Thank you very much, Eva. The next question is addressed again to you. So for contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern studies, broad modules means we have various of choices, right? The transcultural communication, cultural issues, contemporary development of Eurasia.
Well, you have different choices. However, in the base module, you don't have many choices. You have to take the base module as it is set. You have your choices in the electives, and in the electives, really you can choose the courses you are interested in the most and which fit to your background, or you have the feeling that they fit to your future plans. So depending on which courses are available, not all the courses are available each semester. So usually they are taught once a year. It depends on the professors how they are providing the courses, but among the courses which are available, you have quite a free choice in terms of electives and optional courses. But in the base module, you have to take all the courses in the base module.
Thank you very much, Eva. Next, I see several questions about the motivation letters, so I will combine them into one. Could you say a couple more words about motivation letter? What would you expect from it? And then another question, which part should be paid more attention to introduce? Which part probably we should pay more attention to introduce in the motivation letter? The previous learning ability or future learning working plans? Maybe Robert, you can start commenting from your side.
So, I mean, I would say there is not one ideal motivation letter, right? I think the only ideal motivation letter is the one that you have written yourself, right? Because it clearly shows what you want to achieve with that program. However, I can give you some insights of what I'm looking for. So I'm not going to read a letter that goes really like 5 or 6 pages and doesn't get to the point. So be concise, right? So a good motivation letter doesn't need to have a lot of text. It needs to have proper content, yes, but it needs to be focused. So what helps is, for example, to say like, what in your views are going to be the key competences that are required in order for that position. So you start off with saying like, I do expect the ideal candidate to go forward with the study to have X, Y, Z. Obviously, those criteria are the ones that you actually have, right? Because you're selling yourself in that motivation letter. And then it's an optimal idea, or one practice that I have exercised myself when I was supposed to write a motivation letter is actually taking past experiences from my CV that can also be found in the CV that show exactly that core competence, and I highlight that in my motivation letter. So let us assume that, as I said before, it would be good to have an understanding of how society works, to get an understanding how do politics work, like elections, for example. And then third, you would have an understanding of technology. You would actually show, you know, in the past, I worked in the campaign team of a candidate in my home country, or I worked as a election official and administered the elections. Yeah, that would be something you would want to highlight in a motivation letter. Likewise, you could, for example, also say you have always been fascinated with technology because you like to play with cables as a kid, right? I mean, that was something that I liked to do and that I used at one point. But obviously, that's not going to be the one that you will use. But what I try to highlight to you is outline what you think are key criteria, then highlight things from your CV that match those criteria, and then at the end, summarize that, why you are the ideal candidate for studying in that program and why you are really thinking that you're going forward with that. And that doesn't need 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages. It actually just needs one, right? And if you're able to put it down on one page, you actually know that you're on the right track because you have understood what you want from the program and what the program most likely wants from you. And make sure that you're going to rewrite your CV. I mean, that's also important. Your CV needs to match your motivation letter, right? I mean, don't take your standard CV that you have for the 20 other programs that you're applying. Make one specifically for this program where you're actually going to highlight the things of your CV that are important to this program. you have done so many things, I'm very sure, that actually support your application, but only include those that are relevant and unnecessary. So take those two things together, they need to match, and that's what counts.
Thank you very much, Robert. Eva, would you like to comment from your side?
Well, I think Robert gave a really fascinating and to the point explanation of what a motivation letter should be. So yes, and in terms of the motivation letter for the Commerce program, it is also written on the homepage that you should also mention your potential MA master thesis topic. So above all, like it should be 1 page long, because we all have to read it, and we don't want to read 5 or 6 pages each motivation letter. So it has to be quite precise and to the point. And additionally, I would like to read on your plans about the potential master thesis topic. And as I said before, it's not going to be the way that the topic you write in the motivation letter is the topic at the end you have to do. No, but you have to show that you have the ability to think scientifically, that you have a kind of idea what would be some fascinating problem you want to do research on, you are interested in, and how you could address this kind of issue.
Yeah, I would also share, I mean, you know, highlighting what you want to do in your master thesis is also a good thing for our program, right? So, I mean, that always helps.
I guess also under the program pages, you can find the requirements, the motivation letter. So I also would encourage you to check these requirements.
And I hate typing mistakes. I want you to...
Yes, and check it carefully. Yes. Thank you very much. Let's go to another question. Also, we have general question. Is it possible to have an exchange semester and still finish the course in 2 years? Robert, what do you think?
So, I mean, this is certainly absolutely possible. Actually, can be something that actually helps you to advance. So if you actually select your exchange semester very carefully, by actually looking who is teaching at the other university, and you actually maybe find an expert that is also able to help you with your master thesis, right? It might actually be that the exchange semester is a catalyst that actually allows you to finish within time. So from our side in the program, we actually have built in certain elements that will allow you to get credits also at the foreign university, that you actually can transfer that experience. So this is something we encourage. And as long as you do things in close alignment with us from the program management, an exchange semester is no problem, whether that is within the Erasmus sphere or even beyond, which might need a bit more organizational skills on your side. But yes, that's certainly something we encourage and we motivate. We want you to take it, but it's not a must, but rather an opportunity, and can even be a catalyst for finishing in time.
Eva, what about you? Do you see a possibility to finish studies in time?
It depends on your own motivation and strategic planning, as Robert also said, because it really depends on where you go for the study abroad, what kind of professors are there, and I think it's a lot of work. If you want it to work out, you have to concentrate a lot on the planning. You have to be very sure where you go, what kind of courses, for example, are available there. Can you transfer the credits to our university? Do you have some mentor or professor over there who's maybe helping you or just discussing, for example, your master thesis topics with you, that you can further your develop your topic? So it really depends on your own engagement and strategic planning as well. But it is possible, I would say, yes.
Thank you very much. So the next question is addressed to Robert. Can I apply for governance in digital age MA if I have a bachelor degree in social media and publishing?
I think we answered that question already before. That is certainly possible. Important is that you show us how you're going to use your experience in social media and publishing in also critically understanding what does social media bring with it, right? So if you would, for example, help us to understand how do you actually go about targeting your audience? How do you actually make use of the selection criteria that you have about the advertisement options that actually might have those negative effects around digital bubbles, like how the background algorithms around artificial intelligence are actually fostering this, sometimes also in a negative way, of a disinformation campaign, right? So those would be elements that you want to bring out with your background, that you're actually aware of how you can apply your past experience for the topics that are being taught in this master's program. That certainly includes this hot topic of disinformation.
Thank you very much. The next question is addressed to Eva. Will university point out the internship site according to the student's need, or the internship location should be chosen by the student on his own?
So in general, the student is responsible for the internship. Of course, we can give you advice, but you have to choose the internship according to your own needs, and also, but it has to be connected to the program.
Thank you very much. So there is another question, or basically statement. My major is public and municipal administration.
I think that belonged to a previous question. I think she just highlighted her background. I think she had asked, or he had asked before about her GPA, and then we answered about the scholarship. And so I think that's just further elaboration on the previous question.
Yes. So the next one is for Robert again. Hi, I'm Richa Verma from India. I'm applying for politics and governance. I want to know that topic for the master thesis would be poorly related to the subject we studies in our program, or we can relate it with some other topic.
I mean, it depends again on your marketing skills, right? I mean, if you can convince us that building a moon station or a Mars mission is connected to building up governance structures and the political effects around that, that China is racing against the Emirates and the United States, I wouldn't see a problem why you wouldn't be able to choose a topic around the Mars mission, right? But it is clear that you need to reflect and you need to actually be able to process or to show that they were able to learn something from our program as part of the master thesis. So we're certainly not going to accept the master thesis topic that is not in any way connected to the master's program, but that connection can be built with actually most topics, and that is always up to you and to the program management on to decide. Yeah.
Thank you very much. The next question is addressed to Eva, and it's again about the thesis topics. So what are the current master thesis topics for contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern studies students who plan to graduate in 2021?
Okay, I don't know all of them by heart, but there are quite many students right now who are focusing on China from different angles. For example, communication or dialogue between Europe and China, or Chinese influence in Eastern Europe, for example. Or we have one student who's working on Japan, on one Japan-related topic on artificial intelligence and robotics in Japan. Then there's one student who's doing research on Southeast Asian workers on the Estonian labor market. Then we have one student who's focusing on was Middle East related topic on relations between, I think it was relations between Russia and the Middle East. I really have to see the list if you want to have the exact topics, but it's quite a variety. However, many students are interested in China and relations between Asia and Europe.
Thank you, Eva. So next question. Hello, I currently reside in Tallinn with my family. A question on the online form request whether my family will come with me or not. Kindly advise on the right option to select. I honestly don't think that there is like this question in our application form in Dream Apply. We never ask about the family. I think it's something visa related question. So basically, I think we cannot answer this. So it's up to you. If your family is coming, that you should indicate that. If you are coming without family, then not. So, or maybe you can clarify which form you mean.
Maybe this is a question for the admissions.
Yes, or our study abroad center. So yes. Maybe I will leave a contact in the chat. So I will provide you this the email of student visa advice. So you can contact people who are working with visas and ask this question. So the next question is addressed to Eva. So I would like to ask Professor Eva Lias in relation to the Contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern Studies Master. What would be the career opportunities in relation to Asian studies related more to the political or diplomatic field?
I guess it depends on you, right, on your background, but well, you could, depending also on your country, because I think countries and processes of how you get to work somewhere are very different, but if you have solid knowledge in Asian studies, if you know certain regional developments in Asia, if you know the political aspects of countries in Asia, you could work in, for example, foreign ministry. It doesn't really necessarily mean that you are directly a diplomat, but you can start somewhere in the foreign ministry, for example, depending on a country, really. So also doing political analysis for governments, for example. I think there are really different options, and it depends a lot on your background and interests.
Thank you, Eva, sorry. Then next question, can your students take first semester Erasmus Plus? Maybe Robert, you can start commenting this.
Well, I mean, I think there is no restriction in terms of doing Erasmus Plus in our program. For the first semester, I would say that's not ideal, right? So, I mean, there is a certain number of required courses that we have tightly arranged and organized in a condensed program for the first 2 semesters. So I wouldn't say that it's advised to take the exchange semester then, because then basically you will have to take the first semester courses in your 3rd semester, because they will not be offered every semester, but actually every year. And so that would actually be detrimental to actually also how you feel in the program. And as you know, groups get formed within the first 10 seconds. So the storming and norming happens immediately at the very beginning. So, if you miss that, you will always feel as an outsider. So I would actually really discourage you from missing that moment with your cohort. So yes, it would be possible, most likely. You would probably have to find those organizational ways through it, but I wouldn't encourage, but it's possible to do Erasmus in our program. Yes, of course.
Would you like to comment on this question?
I couldn't agree more.
That's great. So the next question is addressed to Robert. Isn't 5,000 words too much for a motivation letter?
You read the requirements carefully, right? It doesn't say you need to write 5,000 words, including spaces, but it's up to. Yeah, I think we gave you already quite clear feedback on what we expect. So we want you to address the points that are outlined for the motivational letter, which include like your past experience, what you expect from the program, what are your research interests, and you should do that in the most concise way you possibly can. If you cannot put it up to 5,000 words, 5,000 characters, then obviously this is too much, right? So also highlight it's not 5,000 words, but 5,000 characters. So, a word with 5 characters counts already for 5, and so on and so on. I'm not going to go there. So,
yes, thank you very much for your answer. Seems like we have the last question. So if you still have questions, you can write. We are here. So we will take over the last question, but you can still send us your questions. So the question is addressed to Eva. Good afternoon. I would like to ask for the games master if just having an advanced knowledge of English and Spanish are enough for the program and to live in Tartu.
I think so, yes. Yes, you will have to meet the English language requirement, and I think any further language is, of course, interesting, but you need only English for the program, and then you have the chance to study either Asian languages, or if you want to, you can study Estonian, but I think also in Tartu, you can perfectly survive without Estonian.
Yeah, definitely. In Tartu, there is a big community with students, so you can definitely go with English. Okay, it seems we covered all the questions. So our dear participants, you have still chance to ask us. We can still answer your questions. I also would like to point out that we still have webinars coming within the Open Doors week. We are having every day new webinars, and we also have on Friday very useful webinar for the admission questions, and also we have another webinar for practical questions. So check out our program and please join if you're interested. I see that we received new questions, so I think it's addressed to Eva. When it will be precise that Estonia will offer, no, not to Eva, even it's in general, when it will be precise that Estonia will offer scholarships of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So basically, we don't know. We are expecting this information from them soon, but please keep an eye on our website because we are regularly update the information there. So please check it out. And when we have any information from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we are going to immediately update the website. So I think I sent you the link previously, so you have it. So the next question, I'm worried about the English requirements because my country is in the lockdown and I can't do the IELTS exam before March 15. Is that a big problem? I think that this is more admission related questions. So because right now we are kind of in not very standard situation when everything is open and you have this strict deadline. So I probably would suggest you to write to our admission office this question, and maybe they can consider your request, or you can also join on Friday and ask this question from admission specialist. I'm going to leave in the chat the email of the admission office. Just give me 1 second, I'm going to type it. So any admission related question, you can just admissions. You can just address here and you will get an answer pretty soon, pretty fast. So the next question, the TOEFL test is sufficient as well, right? It can be taken online as well. So I think I'm just going to provide you the link to our requirements to English proficiency, and I can tell you that yes, TOEFL test we also accept. We also accept Cambridge test. We have a lot of variety of the international tests that we are accepting. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to copy you the link, so you can check out the list of the tests that can be taken, and you can find the best option for yourself. We also offer tests at our university, but unfortunately right now, because the restrictions, it's more difficult to come to pass the test. But yes, you can find all of the options by the following link. Yes. Seems like we don't have questions anymore. Still, if you have something, please right now, we are still here, but we can wait a little bit. But then if you don't have any more questions, then we will end our session. And I would like also to point out that you are going to receive the recording of this webinar, and also we are going to forward you Eva's presentation. And if Robert doesn't mind, I will also forward you Robert's email. So if you have questions, you can directly contact our program managers and ask your questions from them.
So you can also add, please, then Lisa Talving's email, yeah, just to make sure nothing goes missing.
Sure. Yeah. And you will receive this email with the recording in 3 days, because we need some time to proceed it, and because we have quite many webinars coming. So definitely. Yeah, it seems that we don't have any more questions. So I can just thank you for attending this session, and thank you for being with us. I hope it was very useful. I hope you got an understanding of the programs. I can see that we received one question. Thank you, not question.
Comment.
Yes, I hope it was very useful. I hope it will help you to during the application process and to understand the programs and to choose the right program for you. If you have any questions, we are always here. Please contact us over email. You will receive the follow-up email with our contacts. And last but not least, I really hope to see you this year at the University of Tartu, studying either politics and governance in digital age or contemporary Asian and Middle Eastern studies.
Yeah, looking forward for your applications and the motivation letters.
And stay tuned for our next webinars.